Welcome to Speak English for You.
Hello, and welcome back to Speak English for You. I'm your host.
It is great to be here.
And today, we're doing a deep dive into a topic that I think every single one of us has struggled with at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
We are talking about why we stay in situations that actively hurt us, like why we get stuck in bad jobs, toxic friendships, or just, relationships that drain us.
It's a huge topic.
It really is. So to start us off, I want you to think about this. If you accidentally touch a hot stove, your body doesn't hold a committee meeting to decide what to do.
No, definitely not.
You don't stand there weighing the pros and cons of the heat. You just feel the burn, your autonomic nervous system kicks in, and your hand is gone before you even consciously register the pain.
Right. Such an elegant system. I mean, we are hardwired at a cellular level to immediately retreat from anything that, damages tissue or threatens our physical survival.
Exactly. The reflex is just incredibly clean.
Yeah.
But the moment we step out of that realm of physical danger and into the psychological landscape of our daily lives, our careers, our friendships, our long-term relationships, that flawless survival instinct just seems to completely short circuit.
It really does.
It's like we touch the hot stove, we smell our own skin burning, and instead of pulling away, we just pull up a chair, press our hand down harder, and try to convince ourselves that the room was getting a little chilly anyway.
That is such a vivid way to put it, but it's true. It's honestly one of the most profound paradoxes in human psychology.
Yeah.
Yeah. When faced with emotional or psychological damage, highly intelligent, capable people will actively choose to remain in environments that are demonstrably breaking them down.
And that bizarre, deeply human contradiction is our mission for today's deep dive. We're going to unpack the universal behavior of staying stuck.
We have a really fascinating stack of sources in front of us today, too.
We do.
Ranging from behavioral psychology to some really interesting sociological reflections. And they all circle this same fundamental mystery of why we stay in situations that hurt us.
Because getting stuck isn't about laziness, right?
No, not at all. And it's certainly not about a lack of intelligence. The sources take this apart piece by piece, mapping out the precise cognitive architecture of our own mental prisons. It is about incredibly powerful psychological mechanisms that basically hijack our decision-making.
So for you listening right now, I really want you to anchor this conversation to something real in your own life.
Mm-hmm.
Think about a time or maybe a situation you were sitting in right this very minute. Like a job that leaves you entirely depleted by Tuesday morning.
Oh, wow, yes. We've all been there.
Right. Or a friendship that operates entirely on their terms, just leaving you totally drained and resentful. Or a relationship that, deep in your bones is just not good for you, but you just cannot seem to walk away.
It's so hard.
It really is. But today, we're going to break down the exact psychological traps that are causing that paralysis.
And we really have to start with the narratives we construct. I mean, the stories we tell ourselves.
The excuses, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When we are in a state of ongoing distress, the brain just cannot tolerate the cognitive dissonance of doing nothing. So we spin stories to justify the pain.
Like what kind of stories?
We tell ourselves things like, well, it's just a rough patch, or I've invested way too much time to quit now, or even, what if the alternative is actually worse?
Okay, let's unpack this. Because that second story, the whole I've invested too much to quit thing, is something the sources identify as the first major roadblock.
Right, the sunk cost fallacy.
Yes, the sunk cost fallacy. But I want to push back slightly on the standard definition here. Because in the real world, human relationships and careers, they aren't financial spreadsheets,
That's a fair point.
If you spend 5 years building a friendship or a career, isn't it just logical, like human nature, to want a return on that investment? We usually call that building equity.
Sure.
It feels deeply unnatural to walk away and just declare bankruptcy on 5 years of your life. It's like forcing yourself to finish a terrible meal just because it was expensive.
That instinct to protect your investment is entirely natural, but it becomes a fallacy when we fail to distinguish between building equity and servicing a deficit.
Wait, say more about that.
Well, equity actually yields returns, right?
Yeah.
But a sunk cost is just a black hole. The sources use this classic behavioral economics example of a bad movie ticket.
Oh, I hate when this happens.
Right. So you pay $15, you sit down, and 20 minutes in, you realize the movie is objectively terrible.
It's awful.
Yeah. But you stay for the next 2 hours simply because you paid for it. The logic fails completely because the money is already gone.
You can't get it back.
Exactly. Staying doesn't refund the ticket. It simply costs you 2 additional hours of your life.
I mean, I understand the math of the movie theater, but applying that to a 5-year relationship or a decade-long career, it feels so much heavier. The stakes are a lot higher than $15.
They are higher, which is exactly what makes the fallacy that much more dangerous. Let's look at the psychology behind it. When you walk out of that movie or when you quit that miserable job after 3 years, you have to do something the human ego completely despises.
Which is what admit you made a mistake.
Admitting you made a mistake, yeah.
Yeah.
You have to admit that the time is gone and you basically have nothing to show for it.
Ouch.
That's hard.
It's incredible.
Right. The 3 years you spent in that toxic workplace are unrecoverable. All you actually possess is the future. And by staying, you are taking your very real, very limited future time and throwing it into the exact same fire that consumed your past.
Wow, you're just compounding the loss.
Exactly. You're losing even more.
Which brings us to a massive friction point, I think. Because if the sunk cost fallacy was just a math problem, we could easily math our way out of it, right?
You think so, yes.
I mean, we're smart enough to realize that staying at a terrible job until retirement doesn't fix the fact that it was terrible for the first 10 years.
Yeah.
So there has to be a deeper emotional layer keeping us tethered to the seat.
The math is only the surface. The emotional tether, and as the second major trap the sources identify, is the fear of the unknown.
Right.
Which is very often disguised as the comfort of the devil you know.
We hear that phrase all the time, don't we? Better the devil you know than the devil you don't.
All the time.
Like, you might be miserable at your job, but you know exactly how the misery operates. You know which managers to avoid. You know the exact flavor of the passive aggression in the office.
It's predictable pain.
It is predictable, but why does our brain prefer a guarantee of misery over, like, even just the possibility of happiness? Because leaving offers at least a 50-50 shot at things getting better, right? While staying offers a 100% chance of continued pain.
Well, what's fascinating here is how the brain's prediction engine actually operates. From an evolutionary standpoint, your brain was not designed to make you happy.
It wasn't.
No, it was designed to keep you alive.
And
to keep you alive, it needs to predict outcomes. Uncertainty generates a massive error signal in the amygdala.
like an alarm going off.
Exactly. A rustling bush might just be the wind, or it might be a predator. The brain treats ambiguity as a literal threat to your survival.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right. So when you contemplate leaving the known misery of your job, you don't picture freedom or, a better salary. You catastrophize. You picture unemployment, destitution, and total failure.
We essentially build a monster in the dark to justify staying in the poorly lit room.
We really do. The familiar pain is a known variable. You have already proven to yourself that you can survive it.
Because you're surviving it right now.
Exactly. The unknown, however, requires new, untested survival strategies. And the sources point out this incredibly sharp false equivalence we make here.
What's the false equivalence?
We tell ourselves that being alone, or being unemployed, is the absolute worst possible outcome. But the text argues strongly against this. It states that being alone is not the worst thing. Being intimately attached to something that is slowly breaking you down is far worse.
That concept of the slow break is just so insidious because it happens incrementally, right? Like day by day, so we just acclimate to it.
We adjust to the pain.
We do. We don't treat it like the emergency it actually is. If someone dropped you into your toxic workplace today with no prior history, you would run for the door immediately.
Without a second thought.
But because the toxicity increased by just like 1% every week for 3 years, your baseline for what constitutes normal completely shifted.
It's the normalization of chronic stress over acute stress. We are terrified of the sudden, acute shock of walking away, so we willingly endure the chronic, slow drip of poison.
That is so sad when you think about it.
It is. But the sources are urging us to realize that the devil you know is still actively destroying you. The fear of the unknown is merely a projection, but the deterioration of your mental health in the present, that is an empirical fact.
Okay, so we have the cognitive trap of the sunk cost fallacy keeping us tied to our past. And we have the emotional trap of the fear of the unknown keeping us from stepping into our future. But the third trap the sources explore is the one that caught me completely off guard. It takes something we universally celebrate as a core human virtue and reveals how it can actually morph into a psychological prison.
Ah, yes. You're referring to the trap of hope.
Yes, the trap of hope and denial. We stay because we hope. We hope the toxic friend will suddenly remember our birthday and become supportive.
Or the partner will change.
Right. We hope the draining partner will magically transform into the person they were during, the first 3 months of dating. But society tells us constantly that hope is the engine of human progress.
We're told to never give up.
Exactly. We are inundated with those narratives. Wait, aren't we always taught that hope is a virtue and we should never give up? How does something as vital as hope become a mechanism for self-sabotage?
Well, hope is absolutely a virtue when it is applied to a blank slate or when it's paired with actionable momentum. But the sources draw a really rigid line between optimism and denial.
Where is that line?
That line is drawn by the timeline of evidence. The source material asks a very direct question. You have been hoping for 2 years. How many more years will you hope?
Oh, wow. The timeline completely alters the context, doesn't it?
It changes everything.
Like, hoping for something to change next week is optimism. Hoping for something to change after 700 consecutive days of it remaining exactly the same, that's something else entirely.
It is. The human brain is incredibly susceptible to intermittent reinforcement.
Like a slot machine.
Exactly like a slot machine. If a machine never pays out, you stop pulling the lever. But if it pays out just often enough, say, your toxic friend is suddenly incredibly kind to you 1 day out of 30, your brain gets a massive dopamine spike.
And that hooks you right back in.
Right. That tiny breadcrumb of positive reinforcement fuels the hope that the jackpot of a healthy dynamic is just around the corner. But the reality is you have years of data. You have empirical evidence showing you exactly who this person is or what this job entails.
So at a certain point, calling it hope is just a rebranding of denial.
The sources are very blunt about this. At some point, hope without change crosses the line from optimism into active denial of reality. You are no longer hoping for a better future,
What are you doing then?
You are using the concept of hope as an anesthetic to numb the reality of your present. It allows you to feel like you are doing something noble, like, oh, I'm keeping the faith, when in reality, you were just avoiding the terrifying work of making a change.
That is heavy. But here's where it gets really interesting to me. We use hope to shift the responsibility.
How so?
If I am hoping the situation will change, then the burden of action is on the situation or on the other person. I am passively waiting for the environment to rescue me, which means I am entirely absolved from having to rescue myself.
It's a surrender of agency masquerading as patience.
That's a great way to put it.
We have mapped the 3 traps beautifully here, I think. We see how sunk costs leverage our past, how fear weaponizes our future, and how denial distorts our present.
The architecture of the trap is very clear now.
But the sources don't just leave us analyzing the bars to sell, right? They provide a blueprint for dismantling them.
Yes, they do. And that blueprint starts with a very uncomfortable litmus test. It cuts through the cognitive dissonance, it cuts through the denial, and asks one clarifying question.
And that is?
If nothing changes, will you still want to be here 1 year from now?
That is so powerful.
Yeah.
I strongly suggest everyone listening apply that question to the situation they thought of at the beginning of this deep dive.
Yes, please do.
Strip away your investments. Strip away your fear of the unknown. Strip away the intermittent reinforcement and the hope for a magical turnaround. Just look the raw, unedited reality of the situation exactly as it exists today. If the dynamic is identical 365 days from now, do you want to be there?
And if the answer is a definitive no, the follow-up is brutal but necessary. Why are you waiting?
Right. What's going to change?
Exactly. What miraculous intervention is going to occur between today and next year that hasn't already occurred in the last 5 years? This directly ties into a metaphor the sources use to attack the concept of learned helplessness. They state, very simply, you are not a tree. You can move. You can leave. You can start over.
I love that. It sounds elementary, but it addresses a deep psychological phenomenon. When we're subjected to chronic stress or ongoing emotional drain, our executive function actually diminishes.
It gets paralyzed.
Yes. We actually forget our own capacity for movement. We even use vocabulary that reflects this paralysis. We say we are rooted, planted, or stuck.
We do say that.
We conceptualize our environment as a permanent geographical feature rather than a temporary set of circumstances.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We literally forget we have legs. We adopt the biology of a tree to excuse our lack of motion, reminding ourselves that we literally have legs, that we possess absolute agency over our physical location and social ties. It just shatters that learned helplessness.
It does.
But the sources are also remarkably intellectually honest about what comes next. They don't sell a fairy tale where leaving instantly fixes your life and suddenly the sun is shining. Leaving a 5-year friendship is agonizing. Quitting a secure job, even a miserable one, is terrifying. It will hurt.
It will hurt immensely. But staying hurts too.
Yeah.
The philosophy the sources arrive at is a mandate to choose your hard. You have to select which pain you are willing to endure.
Choose your hard. So what does this all mean for how we frame that choice? Because our culture tends to view leaving as synonymous with quitting.
Very true.
If a marriage ends or you walk away from a career path, there is a societal stigma that you couldn't hack it or that you failed to make it work. How does choosing our pain rewrite that narrative?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it comes down to understanding the difference between destructive pain and constructive pain.
Okay, break that down for us.
Staying in a situation that violates your boundaries or erodes your self-worth is destructive pain. It is the pain of a deteriorating joint. It serves no biological purpose other than to signal ongoing damage, and it honestly only gets worse over time.
It's pain without a payoff.
Exactly. Leaving, conversely, introduces constructive pain. Yes, there is the grief of untangling your life from someone else. Yes, there's the stark terror of financial uncertainty or social isolation.
Which is very real.
Very real. But that pain is the friction of growth. It is the soreness of a muscle after a heavy workout. The fibers are torn and it aches, but it is repairing itself stronger. It is pain with a definitive, positive trajectory, the purpose of reclaiming your autonomy.
That completely flips the societal script on failure. Leaving is not a failure to endure, it is a refusal to be destroyed.
Beautifully said.
You aren't quitting, you are launching a rescue mission. You are rescuing your future decades from the sunk costs of your past. You are rescuing your daily reality from the anesthetic of denial.
You are asserting that the unknown, with all its dark ambiguity and potential risks, is still infinitely more valuable than the guaranteed destruction of your current environment. Leaving simply means you finally chose yourself. And choosing your own survival and growth is the absolute antithesis of failure.
Wow. Let's pull all these threads together because we have navigated some pretty dense psychological territory today.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. We started by questioning the paradox of why we stay when the stove is clearly burning us. We identified the sunk cost fallacy, our desperate attempt to validate the time and energy we've already lost by sacrificing our future time to the exact same lost cause.
Then we explored the fear of the unknown. We analyzed how the brain's prediction engine catastrophizes ambiguity, convincing us that the familiar pain of our current reality, even as it slowly breaks us, is somehow safer than the unpredictable nature of freedom. We basically settle for the devil we know to appease our amygdala.
And we tackled the subtle trap of hope and denial. We learned that when we have years of empirical data showing us who someone is or what a situation is, continuing to hope for change is no longer optimism. It is the mechanism we use to numb our present reality and excuse our own inaction.
The antidote to all of this is reclaiming our agency, recognizing the learned helplessness, acknowledging that you are not a tree, and committing to the constructive pain of leaving. You accept the soreness of growth to stop the deterioration of your spirit.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to bring the focus right back to you, the listener. Earlier, we asked you to think about that specific situation in your life right now, that job, that friendship, that lingering relationship. I want you to hold it in your mind today and evaluate it against everything we've just discussed.
That's a great homework assignment.
Right. Ask yourself, are you sitting in a miserable theater simply because you bought the ticket 5 years ago? Are you waiting for a slot machine to pay out when the machine has been unplugged for a decade? That's your action item for this week. Really reflect on that.
And as you sit with those questions, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. If we connect the dots on how much effort it takes to stay stuck, this raises an important question about your own capacity.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Think about the sheer volume of emotional energy you spend every single day just managing your misery. The bandwidth it takes to navigate a toxic boss, the psychological armor you have to wear to survive a draining partner, the exhausting mental gymnastics required to maintain your denial.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
You are practically running a marathon every day just to stay in the exact same place. If you took all of that immense resilience, the strength you have built up purely to endure the unendurable, and instead invested it into the blank slate of the unknown, what incredible things might you actually be capable of building?
It's the difference between using all your strength to hold up a collapsing roof versus using that exact same strength to build a whole new house. The stove is hot, you feel the burn, and despite what your brain's fear center tells you, you are not a tree. You can pull your hand away anytime you want.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for diving deep with us today. Remember to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a deep dive. Until then, keep speaking English for you.